Welcome to History Uncovered, where we delve into the stories and events that have shaped our world. In this episode, we set our sights on the turbulent and treacherous seas of the Golden Age of Piracy, unmasking one of its most notorious figures, Edward Teach, more widely recognized as Blackbeard. Born in obscurity but dying in infamy, Blackbeard has been immortalized in history and pop culture as a symbol of piracy's ruthless and rebellious spirit. Through mist and cannon smoke, he emerges not merely as a character in a sea shanty, but as a real man whose life was as complex and captivating as the myths that surround him. Join us as we navigate through the dangerous waters of the Caribbean and Atlantic, challenging the myths and revealing the man behind the fearsome facade. Stand by for a journey into the life of Blackbeard, the dread pirate, the cunning strategist, and the surprisingly shrewd businessman. Prepare to weigh anchor and set sail into a world of high seas adventure and treachery, where fortunes were made and lives were lost. Edward Teach, better known as Blackbeard, is a name steeped in myth, feared by many during his lifetime and intriguing many more after his death. It's believed he was born around 1680, given that he was about 35 to 40 years old when he died. His name appears in historical records in various forms: Edward Thatch, the Che, Thack, Tack, that Che, and Theach, with Edward Teach being the most common usage. The truth is, we don't even know for certain if Teach was his real name. Pirates were known to use aliases to prevent their piratical exploits from sullying their family names. Some sources suggest his surname might have been Drummond, but with no firm evidence to back this up, it's unlikely we'll ever know Blackbeard's true identity. Given the maritime boom in Bristol, England, during the late 17th and early 18th centuries, due to the rise of Britain's American colonies and the expansion of the Atlantic slave trade, it's likely that Teach was raised in this bustling port city. His ability to read and write, unusual for many of his contemporaries, suggests he may have been born into a wealthy, respectable family. There's speculation that he might have initially arrived in the Caribbean on a merchant vessel, possibly a slave ship. We do have some accounts that Teach spent time as a sailor from Jamaica, serving on privateer ships during the War of the Spanish Succession, earning a reputation for his boldness and personal courage. However, as with much of Blackbeard's life before he embraced piracy, the exact details remain elusive, shrouded in the mists of time and legend. As the 18th century dawned, the West Indies became a hotbed of seafaring activity, filled with stories of colonialism, commerce, and piracy. Pirates like Henry Jennings decided to use the island of New Providence as their base of operations, due to its proximity to the bustling shipping lanes of the Florida Strait and the Atlantic Ocean. New Providence offered an ideal harbor that could hold hundreds of ships, yet was too shallow for the large vessels of the Royal Navy. This provided a sanctuary for pirates, away from the reach of the law. The island became a transient abode, housing pirates, traders, and other floating population, with very few permanent residents. It was here that Edward Teach, later known as Blackbeard, found refuge. Likely following the signing of the Treaty of Utrecht, Teach left Jamaica for New Providence. Here, like many other former privateers from the war, he fell into piracy. Around 1716, he joined the crew of Captain Benjamin Hornigold, a well-known pirate operating from the safe waters around New Providence. Hornigold was so impressed with Teach that he put him in command of a captured sloop. In early 1717, Hornigold and Teach set sail for the mainland, each commanding a sloop. They plundered a boat from Havana carrying 120 barrels of flour and a sloop from Bermuda with 100 barrels of wine. Shortly after, they hijacked a vessel traveling from Madeira to Charlestown, South Carolina. During this voyage, Teach and his quartermaster, William Howard, had their hands full controlling their crew, who developed a particular taste for Madeira wine. It was during this time that the first known report of Teach as a pirate was made, with Captain Matthew Munt's account of Teach in command of a sloop with 6 guns and about 70 men. In September, they came across Stede Bonnet, a wealthy landowner and military officer turned pirate, whose crew was dissatisfied with his leadership. With Bonnet's permission, Teach took control of his ship, the Revenge, adding it to their flotilla of 3 vessels. However, Hornigold, once a British privateer, only attacked his old enemies, much to the frustration of his crew who watched valuable British vessels pass by unscathed. This tension led to Hornigold's eventual demotion at the end of 1717, after which he promptly retired from piracy, leaving Teach with the Revenge and one other sloop. Hornigold then did what many other denizens of New Providence did: he accepted the king's pardon. The paths of Hornigold and Teach never crossed again after this divergence. On November 28, 1717, Teach's two ships engaged a French merchant vessel named La Concorde off the coast of St. Vincent. After a broadside assault which killed several crew members, the French vessel's captain surrendered. La Concorde, which was carrying slaves, was originally an English merchant ship captured by the French in 1711 and had changed ownership multiple times. Teach and his men took the ship, along with its cargo, to Bequia in the St. Vincent and the Grenadines. There, they relieved the ship of its crew and cargo, turning it into their own vessel. The French crew was given one of Teach's smaller sloops, which they renamed Mauvaise Rencontre, and sailed to Martinique. Teach renamed La Concorde as Queen Anne's Revenge and fitted her with 40 guns. He also assigned his lieutenant, Richards, to command Stede Bonnet's ship, the Revenge. Later in November, Teach attacked a large merchant ship named Great Allen near St. Vincent. After a long battle, Teach forced Great Allen to surrender, offloaded its cargo, and then sank the ship. On December 5, 1717, Teach intercepted the merchant sloop Margaret off Crab Island, near Anguilla. The captain, Henry Bostock, and his crew were held captive for approximately 8 hours, forced to watch as their sloop was looted. Bostock, who was kept aboard the Queen Anne's Revenge, was eventually returned unharmed to the Margaret and allowed to depart with his crew. He later reported the incident to Governor Walter Hamilton upon returning to St. Christopher Island. Bostock's deposition described Teach as commanding a large French Guineaman with 36 cannons and a crew of 300 men. Teach reportedly questioned Bostock about local ship movements and showed no surprise at the mention of an expected royal pardon for pirates. Bostock's account is the first recorded description of Teach, who he described as a tall, spare man with a very black beard which he wore very long. This description gave rise to Teach's notorious nickname, Blackbeard. Other accounts noted his thick black beard was often braided into pigtails, sometimes adorned with small colored ribbons. Blackbeard's imposing appearance, combined with his fearsome reputation, was designed to strike terror into the hearts of his adversaries. Despite his terrifying image, there are no verified accounts of him murdering or physically harming his captives. Teach's activities between late 1717 and early 1718 remain a mystery. He and Stede Bonnet might have been behind an assault near St. Eustatius in December 1717. Henry Bostock reported hearing the pirates mention heading to Samama Bay in Hispaniola, a Spanish territory, but no evidence of pirate activity was found there. On February 6, Captain Hume of HMS Scarborough noted a pirate ship with 36 guns and 250 men, and a sloop with 10 guns and 100 men cruising among the Leeward Islands. Despite efforts to track these ships, they remained elusive, though it was discovered they had sunk a French vessel off St. Christopher Island. By March 1718, Teach and Bonnet were at Turniff Island, east of Belize, where they encountered the Adventure, a Jamaican logwood-cutting sloop. They convinced the captain and crew to join them, with Teach appointing Israel Hands as the captain of the Adventure. They then journeyed to the Bay of Honduras, adding another ship and 4 sloops to their fleet. On April 9, Teach's expanded fleet looted and burned the Protestant Caesar. They then sailed to Grand Cayman, capturing a small turtling ship. Teach possibly made his way to Havana next, where he may have seized a small Spanish vessel departing the Cuban port. The fleet then moved to the site of the 1715 Spanish fleet wreckage off Florida's eastern coast. After disembarking the crew of the captured Spanish sloop, Teach navigated north to Charlestown, South Carolina, assaulting 3 vessels en route. In May 1718, Blackbeard, having proclaimed himself a Commodore, was at the peak of his influence. He implemented a blockade on the port of Charlestown in the province of South Carolina later that month. His flotilla halted every ship attempting to enter or exit the port, beginning with the town's pilot boat. Over the next 5 to 6 days, about 9 vessels were intercepted and plundered near Charlestown Bar, where Blackbeard's fleet was anchored. One intercepted ship, the Crowley, was bound for London with several notable Charlestown residents on board, including Samuel Wragg, a member of the Council of the Province of Carolina. Blackbeard held these passengers captive, informing them that his fleet required medical supplies from the colonial government of South Carolina. If the supplies were not provided, he threatened to execute all the prisoners, send their heads to the governor, and set all the captured ships on fire. In response to Blackbeard's demands, Wragg agreed, and a man named Mr. Marks along with 2 pirates were given 2 days to gather the medicines. Meanwhile, Blackbeard moved his fleet and the seized ships approximately 5 to 6 leagues from land. After 3 days, a messenger sent by Marks returned, explaining that their boat had capsized, causing a delay. Blackbeard extended the deadline, but when the party still didn't return, he maneuvered 8 of his ships into the harbor, causing panic among the town's residents. Upon Marks' eventual return, he explained the delay. While the governor had quickly assembled the requested medicines upon Marks' arrival in town, the 2 pirates who were supposed to escort him back had been difficult to locate because they were drinking with friends and were found inebriated. Blackbeard kept his promise and released the seized ships and prisoners. However, they were stripped of their valuables, including the fine clothing some of them were wearing. While in Charlestown, Blackbeard learned that Woodes Rogers had departed England with several men-of-war vessels with orders to rid the West Indies of pirates. In response, Blackbeard's flotilla sailed north along the Atlantic coast and into Topsail Inlet, off the coast of North Carolina. Their intention was to careen their ships to clean and repair their hulls. However, on June 10, 1718, the Queen Anne's Revenge ran aground on a sandbar. This incident severely damaged many of the ship's timbers and cracked her main mast. Blackbeard ordered several sloops to try and dislodge the flagship using ropes, but their efforts were unsuccessful. The sloop Adventure, commanded by Israel Hands, also ran aground, and both vessels seemed to be irreparably damaged. As a result, only the Revenge and the captured Spanish sloop were left seaworthy. Blackbeard, whose real name was Edward Teach, became aware of the offer of a royal pardon and probably confided in Stede Bonnet, another pirate captain, his intention to accept it. The pardon was available to all pirates who surrendered on or before September 5, 1718, but it stipulated that immunity was only granted for crimes committed before January 5 of that year. Although this technically left both Bonnet and Teach liable to be hanged for their actions at Charlestown Bar, most authorities could waive such conditions. Teach believed that Governor Charles Eden was a man he could trust. Bonnet departed immediately for Bath Town, where he surrendered to Governor Eden and received his pardon. He then returned to Beaufort Inlet to gather the Revenge and the rest of his crew, intending to sail to St. Thomas Island to receive a commission. However, Blackbeard had already stripped the ship of its valuables and marooned its crew. Bonnet sought revenge but was unable to find Blackbeard. Bonnet and his crew returned to piracy and were captured on September 27, 1718 at the mouth of the Cape Fear River. All but 4 were tried and hanged in Charlestown. Author Robert Lee hypothesized that Blackbeard and his crew intentionally grounded the ships to decrease the fleet's crew and thus increase their share of the loot. Ignatius Pell, the boatswain of the Revenge, testified during the trial of Bonnet's crew that Blackbeard had intentionally caused the ship to run aground. Before departing northward for Ocracoke Inlet, Blackbeard marooned about 25 men on a small sandy island roughly a league from the mainland. He may have done this to prevent any opposition they might have to his plans. These men were rescued 2 days later by Bonnet. Blackbeard then continued on to Bath, where he and his diminished crew received their pardon from Governor Eden. Blackbeard settled in Bath, on the eastern side of Bath Creek at Plum Point, near Eden's home. He frequently traveled between his base in the town and his sloop off Ocracoke. Although it is said that he married the daughter of a local plantation owner, there is no supporting evidence for this. Eden allowed Blackbeard to sail to St. Thomas to seek a commission as a privateer, and Blackbeard was given official title to his remaining sloop, which he renamed Adventure. However, by the end of August, Blackbeard had returned to piracy. At Ocracoke Inlet, which was Blackbeard's favorite anchorage point, he first spotted the approaching ship of Charles Vane, another English pirate. Teach and Vane spent several nights on the southern tip of Ocracoke Island, accompanied by other notorious figures such as Israel Hands, Robert Deal, and Calico Jack. The news of Edward Teach, also known as Blackbeard, and Charles Vane's gathering alarmed the governor of Pennsylvania so much that he dispatched 2 sloops to capture the pirates. They were unsuccessful, but Governor Alexander Spotswood of Virginia also grew concerned about the seemingly retired pirates living in the neighboring colony of North Carolina. As a result, Spotswood issued a proclamation requiring all former pirates to surrender their arms and not to travel in groups larger than 3. Spotswood learned that William Howard, the former quartermaster of Blackbeard's ship, the Queen Anne's Revenge, was in the area. Suspecting that Howard might know of Blackbeard's location, he had Howard and his 2 slaves arrested. This arrest sparked legal controversy as Spotswood did not have the legal authority to try pirates. Howard's attorney, John Holloway, brought charges against Captain Brand of HMS Lyme, where Howard was imprisoned. Holloway sued on Howard's behalf for damages of £500, claiming wrongful arrest. However, Spotswood's counsel argued that the governor was entitled to try pirates without a jury in times of crisis under a statute of William III, and that Blackbeard's presence constituted a crisis. Howard was charged with several acts of piracy supposedly committed after the pardon's cutoff date. Although Howard was initially sentenced to be hanged, he was saved by a commission from London that pardoned all acts of piracy committed by surrendering pirates before August 18, 1718. Having learned of Blackbeard's whereabouts from Howard, Spotswood planned to send forces into North Carolina to capture the notorious pirate. To assist in this endeavor, he ordered Captains Gordon and Brand of HMS Pearl and HMS Lyme to travel to Bath, the town where Blackbeard was suspected to be. Lieutenant Robert Maynard of HMS Pearl was given command of 2 commandeered sloops to approach the town from the sea. Additionally, the Assembly of Virginia offered a reward for Blackbeard's capture. Maynard set sail with the 2 sloops on November 17, commanding 57 men from HMS Pearl and HMS Lyme. After a slow journey giving Brand's force time to reach Bath, Brand arrived near the town on November 23. With the aid of several North Carolinians, including Colonel Moore and Captain Jeremiah Vale, Brand informed Governor Eden of their purpose and began their search for Blackbeard. 2 canoes were sent down Pamlico River to Ocracoke Inlet to scout for the pirate, thus setting the stage for the impending conflict. On the evening of November 21, Lieutenant Robert Maynard located the pirates anchored on the inner side of Ocracoke Island. Despite having gathered their location from ships he had encountered on his journey, he decided to wait until the following morning to attack due to unfamiliarity with the local waters. Blackbeard, on the other hand, was entertaining guests without a lookout. As daylight broke, Maynard's 2 sloops entered the channel, prompting Blackbeard to cut the Adventure's anchor cable and position his ship to face Maynard's slowly approaching vessels. The Adventure then headed for a narrow channel near the beach of Ocracoke Island, where the sequence of events is uncertain due to conflicting accounts. A devastating broadside from the Adventure resulted in Maynard losing up to a third of his forces. The attack severely damaged the Ranger, rendering it out of action. Following this, it's unclear whether the Adventure ran aground on a sandbar due to small arms fire from the Jane, or if Jane and Ranger were grounded themselves. Maynard, having kept many of his men below deck, prepared for close combat. As the ships contacted, Blackbeard led his men aboard the seemingly empty sloop. However, Maynard's hidden men then emerged, surprising Blackbeard and his crew. The ensuing fight was bloody, with Teach and Maynard facing off personally. Although Teach initially had the upper hand, one of Maynard's men managed to slash him across the neck. This turned the tide of the fight, leading to Teach's death and the quick surrender of his remaining crew. Maynard found that Teach had been shot 5 times and cut about 20 times. He decapitated Teach and hung his head from his sloop's bowsprit to claim the bounty. Upon returning to Virginia, Maynard had Blackbeard's head placed on a pole at the entrance to Chesapeake Bay, where it remained for several years as a warning to other pirates. The exact casualty count from the battle varies, with different accounts reporting different numbers of deaths among the pirates and Maynard's crew. After the battle, Lieutenant Maynard stayed on Ocracoke Island for several days to conduct repairs and bury the dead. The loot taken from Blackbeard, sugar, cocoa, indigo, and cotton was sold at auction, along with other goods found in the barn of Tobias Knight, earning £2,238. Governor Spotswood used some of the proceeds to cover the costs of the operation. Despite the bounty for capturing Blackbeard being around £400, the reward was shared between the crews of HMS Lime and HMS Pearl, which Maynard saw as unjust as they hadn't been involved in the battle. His cause wasn't helped when it was revealed that he and his crew had taken about £90 from Blackbeard's booty. The reward money took 4 years to be distributed, and Maynard, despite his bravery, was not promoted and eventually faded into obscurity. The remainder of Blackbeard's crew and associates were found by Captain Brand in Bath and were transported to Williamsburg, Virginia, where they were jailed on charges of piracy. They were tried under Admiralty law in March 1719, with 14 of the 16 accused found guilty. The 2 who were acquitted had convincing alibis. One had been a guest at a party, not a pirate, and the other, Israel Hands, had been shot by Blackbeard and still covered by royal pardon. The condemned men were hanged, their bodies left on display as a warning to others. Thank you for joining us on this thrilling journey back in time as we followed the infamous Blackbeard, his last stand against Lieutenant Maynard, and the aftermath that unfolded. The threads of history often weave complex and captivating tales, and Blackbeard's story is no exception. This episode is a testament to the captivating and often murky world of piracy during the Golden Age. Thank you for watching this episode of History Uncovered. If you found this video informative and engaging, please like and subscribe to our channel for more fascinating stories from the past. We delve into various periods and events, aiming to bring the past to life with as much accuracy and intrigue as possible. And don't forget to ring the bell for notifications so that you never miss a new video. Your support helps us continue uncovering and sharing these remarkable stories from our past. Together, let's continue this journey of discovery, peeling back the layers of history one episode at a time. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and always remember that history is a treasure trove of lessons that continue to echo into the present.